The envelope landed on the marble counter with a soft, flat sound. Not thrown, placed, deliberate. Claire looked at her husband. He was checking his phone. He would not meet her eyes. She was 8 months pregnant. She was wearing his old sweatshirt. She had flour on her sleeve from the cinnamon toast she had made for him every single Tuesday for 4 years. "What is it?" she said. "Divorce papers."
You can't be serious.
He said it like a weather
This
report.
changes everything.
"They're fair.
I am quite
I think you'll
serious,
agree."
Donovan.
She did not cry. She did not scream. She picked up the envelope, read the asset declaration. He had listed her as a woman with $140,000 to her name. $140,000. She almost laughed, because Donovan Whitfield had just handed divorce papers to his 8 months pregnant wife, fully convinced he was walking away clean. He had no idea that the building where his mistress worked every single day belonged to her. He had no idea that the car he drove, the apartment they shared, the life he was so casually leaving, had been quietly, completely funded by her. He had no idea that his wife, the quiet one, the grateful one, the one he thought he could afford to leave, was the founder and majority owner of an 11-company empire worth more than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. He thought he was ending a marriage. He was about to find out what he actually ended. This is a story about what happens when a woman stops hiding who she really is, and why the most powerful thing you will ever do is refuse to make yourself small for someone who was never worthy of your fullness. If this story made you feel something, if you have ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better, hit like, drop a comment below telling us your thoughts, and share this with a woman who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. We are so glad you are here.
The envelope hit the marble counter with a soft, flat sound. Not thrown, placed. Deliberate, careful. The sound of a decision that had already been made. Claire Whitfield stood at the stove with her back to her husband. She was making cinnamon toast. She made it every Tuesday morning because Donovan had told her once, 4 years ago, that it reminded him of his grandmother's kitchen. She had remembered that. She had kept remembering it every Tuesday for 4 years. She turned around. The envelope sat between them on the counter. White, legal-sized, her name printed on the front in a font that was trying very hard to seem neutral. She looked at the envelope, then she looked at her husband. Donovan Whitfield was 36 years old. He was square-jawed and broad-shouldered, and the kind of handsome that looked better in photographs than in real life. He was wearing his charcoal suit, the one she had picked up from the dry cleaner last Thursday. He was checking his phone. His jaw was set at an angle she had learned over 6 years to read very precisely. He had rehearsed this. He was relieved it had finally arrived. She wiped her hands on the kitchen towel, looked at the envelope again, did not reach for it. "What is it?" she said. Not a question. The way you say something when you already know the shape of the answer. Donovan set his phone face down on the counter. He looked at her then. His eyes were careful. "You should open it." "Tell me what it is." A pause. "Divorce papers." He said it the way you read a weather report. Factual, prepared. "I had Todd draw them up. My Todd. They're fair. I think you'll agree." The kitchen was very quiet. The toast was still in the toaster. The coffee maker was finishing its cycle, the last few drops hissing into the carafe. Outside, the November morning was pale gray and cold, the kind of cold that comes through glass even when the windows are closed. She was 8 months pregnant. She was wearing his old Georgetown sweatshirt because nothing else fit anymore. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a knot. She had flour on her sleeve from the toast because she had started from scratch today, real bread, the way his grandmother apparently used to make it. "Is she pregnant too?" Claire said. The silence that followed lasted exactly 2 seconds. She counted. That's not relevant, Donovan said. She looked at her stomach. The baby moved, a small roll, low and deliberate, the way the baby moved when it was adjusting position, like someone turning over in sleep. You're Todd, she said quietly. Claire, you said you're Todd, not ours. She picked up the envelope. Did not open it, just held it. The weight of it was nothing. When did you stop thinking of things as ours? He didn't answer. He picked up his jacket from the back of the kitchen chair. He told her the apartment lease was paid through January. He told her his attorney would be in touch regarding the timeline. He told her he hoped she would be reasonable, that he had tried to make the terms fair, that he wanted this to be as smooth as possible for everyone involved. He used the word smooth twice. He left. The front door closed with a click that was also very careful, very deliberate. The sound of a man who had decided not to slam a door and was proud of himself for it. Claire stood in the kitchen. The toaster popped. The toast was slightly too dark at the edges. She did not move. The coffee maker finished. The last drop fell. Silence. She stood there for 1 minute. She knew it was 1 minute because the clock on the microwave changed from 7:14 to 7:15. While she was standing there, holding the envelope and not moving and listening to the apartment be empty in a new way. A specific way. The way it is empty when someone has just left and is not coming back. Then she sat down on the kitchen floor. This was not graceful. Nothing about being 8 months pregnant is graceful, and lowering yourself to a kitchen floor while holding a legal envelope and wearing a sweatshirt with flour on the sleeve is the opposite of graceful. She did it anyway. She sat on the cold tile and leaned her back against the cabinet and put the envelope on her knees. She opened it. The first page was standard. She had seen enough legal documents in her life to read quickly and precisely, to find the operative language, to understand the structure before engaging the details. His attorney's name was at the top. David Marsh, Marsh and Calloway, Family Law. The irony of that last name would have made her smile at another moment. She read the asset declaration. Her assets, as declared by Donovan's attorney, 1 joint checking account, current balance approximately $11,000. Shared furniture and household items, personal effects. 1 savings account in her name, balance approximately $140,000. Her salary from the Glenbrook School District, where she taught 3rd grade 2 days a week because she had wanted to, because she had chosen it, because she had wanted one thing in her life that was simply quiet and human. He had listed her as a woman with $140,000 to her name. She read it twice. Then she sat with that for a moment. Donovan Whitfield had spent 6 years married to a woman. He had slept beside her, eaten dinner with her, argued with her about whether to get a dog, held her hand through the first ultrasound when his voice broke and he said, "I can't believe that's us." He had built a complete and detailed picture of who she was. The picture was wrong. He did not know about Whitfield Capital Group. He did not know that the name Whitfield was her mother's maiden name, given to her daughter instead of her father's, because Catherine Whitfield had wanted her daughter to carry something of hers into the world. He did not know that Claire had taken that name and built a structure around it before she ever met him. Before she was ever Claire Whitfield, the wife, instead of Claire Whitfield, the founder. He did not know that the building where his mistress worked, where Serena Holt, age 29, director of brand partnerships at Halloway Creative, came to work 5 days a week and did her job well and had been sleeping with Claire's husband for the better part of a year, was a subsidiary of a company that Claire owned 73% of. He did not know any of this. He had handed her divorce papers and driven away in the car she had quietly paid for through a household trust, feeling like a man who had made a clean exit. The smoke alarm went off. The toast. Claire got up from the floor, again, not graceful, and turned off the stove and opened the window over the sink and waved the smoke out with the kitchen towel. The cold November air came in hard. It smelled like leaves and exhaust and the faint possibility of rain. She stood at the open window for a moment, the cold air on her face, the sound of the street below. Then she picked up her phone. She sent 3 texts. They were short. The first went to Becca Hartwell. It said, "He did it. Come over." The second went to Margaret Calloway. It said, "It started. We need to talk today." The third went to Owen Gable. It said, "It's time." Then she took the slightly burned cinnamon toast out of the toaster and ate it standing at the window because she was 8 months pregnant and the baby needed breakfast, and because she had learned in 12 years of building something from nothing that you do not make your best decisions on an empty stomach. She did not cry. She was thinking. She had been thinking, in fact, since the moment she saw him place that envelope on the counter. Since the careful, rehearsed way he didn't look at her. Since you're Todd. Claire Whitfield was, above all other things, a woman who thought ahead. She finished the toast, closed the window, washed her hands, then she sat back down at the kitchen table, in a chair this time, because the floor had made her lower back complain. And she read the rest of the divorce papers from the beginning. She wanted to know exactly what he thought he was doing. It told her everything. Becca Hartwell arrived 41 minutes later. She came through the door with a paper bag from the bagel place on Clement Street and 2 cups of decaf, and the controlled energy of a woman who has been waiting a long time to be needed, urgently, and is very focused on not saying the wrong thing first. She looked at Claire at the kitchen table, at the envelope, at the open window, and the lingering smell of slightly burned toast. She set the bag down, sat across from Claire, did not say anything for a full 10 seconds. "Okay," Becca said, finally. "Okay," Claire agreed. "Tell me." Claire told her, flat, precise, in order, the envelope on the counter, the rehearsed voice, the asset declaration with $140,000 and personal effects. "You're Todd." Becca listened. She was 32 years old, sharp-featured, the kind of woman who processed information by going very still and then moving very fast. She was Claire's oldest friend. They had met at 18, freshman orientation, bonded over mutual contempt for a particular professor, and she knew Claire better than almost anyone, almost. She ate a bagel, nodded. "He doesn't know," Claire said, "about the company." "I know he doesn't know," Becca said. "I've known he doesn't know for 6 years, and it has been a significant test of my character not to say anything." "You've done well." "I have done extraordinarily well." Becca took another bite. "Who's the woman?" Claire picked up her phone, pulled up a photo, slid it across the table. Professional headshot, clean background. Serena Holt, Director of Brand Partnerships, Halloway Creative. 29 years old, pretty in an efficient way, good bone structure, good hair, the look of someone who understood that appearance was part of professional currency. Becca looked at the photo for a long moment. "How long have you known?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Becca set down her bagel. "Claire, you have been sitting on this for 6 weeks. I needed to think." "You needed?" Becca took a careful breath. "All right, and you know her because she works for me." The kitchen went quiet in a different way than it had been quiet before. Becca leaned back very slowly against her chair. Her expression went through 3 distinct phases in approximately 4 seconds. "Run that again," she said. Claire explained. She explained the way she explained quarterly projections to her board, precisely without editorializing, in the correct order. Holloway Creative was a boutique marketing agency based in the financial district. 14 months ago, Holloway Creative was acquired by Meridian Ventures, a mid-size investment firm specializing in creative industry assets. Meridian Ventures was a portfolio company of Whitfield Capital Group, which Claire had founded 11 years ago and currently owned 73% of. Serena Holt had been an employee of a company within Claire's portfolio for 14 months. She had been sleeping with Claire's husband for approximately 11 of those months, based on the timeline Claire had reconstructed. For 11 months, Serena Holt had been reporting through 3 layers of corporate structure to the wife of the man she was sleeping with. Neither Serena nor Donovan knew this. Becca was very still. You could fire her. I could do many things, Claire said, but you haven't. Not yet. Becca looked at her best friend, really looked at her, the flower still on her sleeve, the careful calm in her eyes, the baby visible through the sweatshirt, the way it made her whole silhouette different, heavier, more present. Claire, what are you going to do? Claire was quiet. The baby moved again. She pressed her hand flat against her stomach, just for a moment, the automatic gesture she had developed in month 5 and had never stopped doing. I'm going to let him think he won, she said. For a little while. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it. That's Meg. I need to take this. She stood and walked to the window. Becca watched her. The call with Meg Calloway lasted 12 minutes. Meg's voice came through the phone, measured and precise. She was 68 years old, and she had the economy of language of someone who has spent decades in rooms where every word costs something. Claire spoke quietly, facing the window. Becca could hear fragments. Review the Holloway files. Full personnel. No, not yet. I need 30 days. Yes, I understand the exposure. I said not yet, Meg. When she came back to the table, she sat down and ate the second bagel Becca had pushed toward Botshernt without comment. Who is Meg? Becca asked. She had heard the name before, in the vague way you hear the names of people who exist at the edges of a friend's life. My CFO, Claire said. Becca absorbed this. You have a CFO for 9 years, and a company, since I was 23, and none of this. Becca gestured at the air between them, meaning all of it, the scope of it, the fact of it. Donovan never... No. Why not? Claire looked at the table. This was the question she had been sitting with for a very long time. The honest answer had several parts, and she had not said all of them out loud to anyone, not even Meg, not even Owen. Because I wanted to know, she said carefully, what it felt like to be loved without the company in the room. She paused. My mother had money. Quiet money. The kind that attracts a specific type of person. I watched that happen to her. I watched people orbit the money and call it love. She stopped. I wanted something different. I thought if I kept the company separate, I could have something real. Becca was quiet. I understand now, Claire said, that it doesn't work that way. No, Becca agreed softly. You can't build a real thing on a partial truth. Claire looked at the envelope on the table. That was my mistake. Not the company, the hiding. Becca reached across the table and put her hand over Claire's. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. After a moment, Claire said, He's been with her for nearly a year, Becca. I know. He sat across from me at this table every morning for a year. He knew what he was doing. He made a choice. She looked up. Her eyes were dry, steady. He just didn't know what he was choosing against. Becca squeezed her hand once. What do you need right now? Claire thought about it honestly. I need someone to sit here with me for a while, she said, and then I need to call my attorney. Both of those things are easy, Becca said. She settled back in her chair with her coffee and looked at Claire with the quiet, fierce love of someone who has been a best friend for 13 years. I'm not going anywhere. The morning light shifted. Outside, a pigeon landed on the window ledge and looked in for a moment, deciding nothing was interesting enough, and left. The baby turned over slowly, making itself comfortable. Claire sat in the kitchen with her best friend and the divorce papers and the weight of what she knew, and she felt, underneath the grief and the anger and the very specific humiliation of being 8 months pregnant and handed an envelope, something else beginning, something small and certain, like a foundation settling into place. The waiting room of Dr. Renee Aldrich's office smelled like lavender and antiseptic, and the particular anxiety of people trying to feel calm. Claire sat in the chair by the window with a magazine she wasn't reading open on her lap. She was 31 years old, 8 months pregnant, and she had come to her prenatal appointment alone because Donovan had always come before, and not coming alone had ceased to be an option at approximately 7:15 that morning. The receptionist had glanced at the empty chair beside her when she checked in. Claire had looked at her with an expression that closed the topic permanently. She waited. The thing about a waiting room is that it gives you nothing to do but think. And the thing about grief is that it does not wait for a convenient moment. It finds the first available stillness and it fills it. The memories came in no particular order. That was the first thing she noticed. She had assumed that looking back would be chronological. It was not. Grief does not file things neatly. Grief shuffles the deck and turns cards over at random and makes you see connections you missed the first time. The fundraiser. 7 years ago. Donovan in a dark jacket at the other end of the room, laughing at something someone had said, his head thrown back, unguarded. She had been there for the foundation, presenting a grant renewal. She had noticed him across the room and thought, with the directness she applied to everything, that man is honest. Something about the laugh, something about the way he occupied space without performing it. She had been wrong about that. The first apartment, the small one in Georgetown that she had pretended to find charming, even as she quietly, through a personal trust, supplemented the rent so they could stay there twice as long as his salary alone would have allowed. She had told herself this was generosity. She had told herself she was giving him the gift of a life that fit. What she was giving him, she understood now, was a fiction, a life that appeared to be his. She had been building a stage set and calling it a home, the business trips, his, not hers. Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, client meetings, industry conferences, the reliable calendar of a man on his way up. She had driven him to the airport twice with Serena Holt's name and his phone under a contact labeled with a colleague's name. She had not known this yet. She had kissed him goodbye in the departures lane and driven home alone and worked until midnight, the way she always worked, and not thought twice. He had been thinking twice about her for a year, the first ultrasound. This was the memory that arrived without warning, the one that landed differently than the others. They had been sitting in a room very much like the one she was sitting in now. The technician had pressed the wand to her stomach, and the sound had filled the room, fast, rhythmic, improbably strong. And Donovan had made a sound she had never heard him make before. Not a word, just a sound. She had looked at him. His eyes were wet. He had taken her hand. He had held it very hard, hard enough that her fingers ached. He had said, his voice completely broken, "I can't believe that's us." She had believed every cell of him in that moment. She believed he had meant it. She still believed he had meant it. That was perhaps the most complicated part. The truth that he had loved her and also done this. That both things were real. That people were capable of holding both things at once without the contradiction destroying them from the inside. She had not been capable of that. She could not simultaneously love someone and be planning to leave them for someone else. But Donovan had managed it for a year. She was still sitting with this when her name was called. Dr. Renee Aldrich was 45 years old, with close-cropped, silver-streaked hair and the manner of someone who delivered difficult information regularly and had learned that what people needed first was facts, then space, then kindness, in that order. She went through the examination efficiently. Measurements, heartbeat, position, everything measured and noted. The heartbeat on the monitor was fast and strong and completely indifferent to the collapsing architecture of its parents' marriage. Claire lay with her eyes on the ceiling and listened to us into it. 44 beats in 10 seconds. She counted automatically, the way she counted everything. Strong, regular, unbothered. You don't know yet, she thought, not for the first or last time. You're in there, doing your job, and you don't know any of this, and in 6 weeks, you're going to arrive into a world that already has a fracture running through it. She felt the grief of that precisely, not for herself, for the baby. Then quietly, another thought. Whole doesn't mean what you thought it meant at 25. Dr. Aldrich was making notes. How are you sleeping? Adequately. Eating? Yes. Dr. Aldrich looked at her over the chart. Not a medical look. The actual question, the one underneath the clipboard. How are you? Claire considered the diplomatic answer, decided against it. My husband served me divorce papers this morning, she said. I'm 8 months pregnant, and I haven't cried yet, and I don't know if that means I'm functioning or if there's something wrong with me. Dr. Aldrich was quiet for a moment. Then she set down the chart. Some women cry immediately, she said. Some women make phone calls. Some women start rearranging furniture. She picked the chart back up. All of those are correct. I made 3 phone calls, Claire said. Then you're a phone call person. She made a note. The baby is positioned well. Head down, good weight for 32 weeks. You need more sleep than you're getting, and I want you off your feet by 8 in the evening. Everything else can wait, Claire finished. Can wait, Dr. Aldrich agreed. It could not wait, actually. But she appreciated the sentiment. She appreciated the cleanness of medical facts in the middle of everything that had no clean edges. She drove herself home. She got as far as the parking garage on the 3rd floor, and she stopped. She pulled into a space and turned off the engine and sat there. She checked her phone. Lock, unlock, lock. Set it in the cup holder. Then she cried. Not the graceful kind, not the cinematic kind, single tear, composed features, the kind that happens when there's finally no one watching, the kind that takes your whole face, the kind that has no dignity in it and doesn't care. She cried because she had loved him. She had genuinely, completely loved him. She had loved the man at the fundraiser with the honest laugh. She had loved the man in the ultrasound room who couldn't find words. She had loved the Tuesday morning versions of him, the half-asleep versions. The versions that appeared at the kitchen table before he was fully assembled into the person he showed the world. She had loved him, and he had made a choice, and the choice was not her. She cried because she had wanted this, the specific, ordinary shape of this life, the apartment with the too small kitchen and the view of the neighbor's fire escape, the cinnamon toast on Tuesdays. She had built an empire, and what she had wanted privately, underneath all of it, was cinnamon toast with someone who stayed. She cried until it was done. It took 11 minutes, She knew because the parking garage ticket on her dashboard ticked up while she sat there. When it was done, she felt hollowed out in the specific way that only crying accomplishes. Not better, not resolved, just emptied of the immediate pressure. She checked her phone. Lock. Unlocked it. Called Meg. We need to move on the restructure, she said. Her voice was completely professionally steady. I want Halloway Creative's full personnel files on my desk by Friday. All personnel? Meg said. Every name on the payroll. She pulled out of the parking garage. She did not look back. Todd Finch's office occupied the 14th floor of a building on California Street, and it was deliberately, precisely non-threatening. Low shelves, good light, chairs that invited sitting back rather than leaning forward. He had designed this intentionally. Most of the people who came to see him were already in the worst months of their lives. The least he could do was give them comfortable chairs. Claire arrived 8 minutes early. She was wearing a dark green dress that did not attempt to minimize her pregnancy. She had her hair down. She looked, Todd thought, when she walked in, like someone who had been through something in the last 24 hours and had processed it completely and was now fully operational. He had known Claire Whitfield for 12 years. He had known her when she was 19 years old, running the investment club at Berkeley, turning a $2,000 seed portfolio into $30,000 by the time they graduated. He had not been surprised to receive her text at 8:47 that morning. He had, in fact, been waiting for some version of it. Show me what he filed, Todd said before she sat down. She handed him the divorce papers. He read them. He was very good at keeping his face neutral. He kept it neutral now, through the first page, the second page, the asset declaration. He set the papers down. Claire, he said. I know. He declared your net assets as $140,000 and personal effects. I know. Sata. He either has no idea or he's operating with incomplete information. He has no idea, she said. Todd laced his hands together on the desk. What does he think you do? I consult, part-time, for nonprofits. She sat back. I do consult for nonprofits. That part is accurate. And the rest? She opened her bag, took out a folder, 3 pages, lean and precise, slid it across the desk. Todd opened it. He was quiet for 4 seconds, which for Todd Finch was the equivalent of a full stop. 73%, Claire said. I see that. 11 portfolio companies. The current consolidated. I'm reading, he said quietly. She waited. He closed the folder, set it on the desk, put both palms flat on the surface. This was established before the marriage. 11 years ago. Full documentation, clean filing history, separate accounts throughout. The company has never commingled funds with any marital asset. He's going to claim he didn't know. He didn't know. His attorney is going to say you concealed material information. They'll use the word fraud. They can use whatever word they like. She didn't move. He is leaving his 8 months pregnant wife. He has been conducting an affair for the better part of a year with a woman who is employed through 3 corporate layers by one of my subsidiaries. I think the full picture will be legible to anyone who looks at it. Todd was quiet for a moment. He picked up his pen. Put it down. You've been planning this. I've been thinking, she said. There's a meaningful difference. He looked at her steadily. What do you want the outcome to be? Not legally. What do you want? She considered this. She had considered it many times in the last 30 days, and particularly in the last 24 hours. I want my daughter to have a father who shows up, she said. I want a clean division of what is mine and what was ours. I want him to understand fully and clearly what he walked away from. She paused. I don't want to hurt him. I want him to know the truth. Todd nodded slowly. Those are achievable. I know they are. That evening, she called Donovan. She had not planned to. She had planned to let the attorneys handle communication from here. But the baby had been moving all day in the particular restless way that happened when Claire hadn't slept well, and she was sitting in the too-quiet apartment, and she picked up the phone. He answered on the third ring. She could hear a restaurant behind him, warm noise, glassware, low music, not the apartment, already somewhere else. Claire? He sounded careful, prepared. She told him she had received the papers, that her attorney would be in touch, that she wanted to discuss co-parenting, specifically what role he intended to take when the baby arrived. His response was measured. He said he planned to be present. He said he wanted to be a good father. He said he hoped she understood this was about the two of them, not the baby. He said, and this was the sentence she would turn over at 3 a.m. for several nights afterward, that he cared about her. He just wasn't in love with her anymore. She said she understood. She said goodnight. She hung up. He wasn't in love with her anymore. She sat in the home office, the small one, the one with the children's drawings still on the wall from the Glenbrook classroom that had been hers for 2 years. She sat surrounded by the careful props of her performed domestic life. She looked at the framed photo on the desk, their honeymoon in Portugal. She was laughing in it, head thrown back, the sun on her face, the unguarded face of someone who had finally let herself stop calculating and just be somewhere. She looked at that face for a long time. He wasn't in love with you anymore, she thought. And then, with the precision that she brought to every real question, was he ever in love with you, or was he in love with who he thought you were? The woman in the photo was real. The laugh was real. The letting go was real. But she had been playing a role at the same time, the quiet, grateful wife, smaller than her actual life. He had loved that, the smallness, when she stopped being entirely small. Even the tiny ways she had stopped, the small moments of confidence or assertion that had crept through, she had felt him recalibrate. She had felt it and filed it away and refused to name it. He needed to be the most powerful person in the room, she thought. And I kept making myself smaller to give him that. And it still wasn't enough. She took the photo off the wall. She did not throw it. She set it face down on the desk, carefully, opened her laptop. There was work to do. There was always work to do, and work had the great advantage of being real and requiring her full attention. And right now requiring her full attention was a mercy. She worked until midnight. The baby moved steadily beside her, present and unbothered, keeping its own counsel. It arrived on a Wednesday. Not the slow grief kind of anger, not the quiet, strategic kind she had been holding for 6 weeks. The real kind. The kind that comes in the middle of the night and sits on your chest and says, no, we're not filing this away. We are going to feel this right now. It was 2:47 in the morning. Claire knew because she had been watching the clock with the special intensity of someone who could not sleep and was angry about that also. She got up. She went to the kitchen, made chamomile tea she didn't want, stood at the counter, and drank it in the dark. She thought about Donovan at that restaurant, the warm noise behind him on the phone, the ease in his voice, the someone else apartment ease of a man who had already separated himself mentally from the marriage while still sleeping in its bed. She thought about how many Tuesday mornings she had made toast. 208 Tuesdays. She had counted once, idle math, in a meeting the way her brain worked. 208 Tuesdays of cinnamon toast for a man who had spent roughly 56 of those Tuesdays actively planning to leave. She put down the tea. I was not invisible, she thought. That was not what happened here. I was present. I was there. I showed up in every way I knew how to show up. He chose not to see me. Then, underneath that, the harder thing, I gave him a version of me that was easier to leave. I made myself leavable. I thought I was being loved for my realness, and the whole time I was being loved for my performance of smallness, and that is not the same thing at all. She stood at the kitchen window. The city outside was the 4 in the morning city, emptied and honest. Streetlights on the wet pavement, a car going by slowly, the red light at the corner, cycling green to no one. She was angry. She was angry in a way that had been building for 6 weeks, and possibly for longer, possibly for years, in the patient, filed-away way she handled everything she wasn't ready to deal with directly. She was angry about the asset declaration that listed her as a woman with $140,000. She was angry about the lease paid through January, the implicit suggestion that she had been managed out of a situation. She was angry about the word smooth. She was angry that he had made her feel lucky to have him. Not always. Not completely. But enough. Enough that she had bent herself into shapes she didn't naturally hold in order to maintain a thing she had believed was worth maintaining. She had told no one the real shape of her company because she wanted to be loved for herself. And the man who was supposed to love her for herself had been spending his evenings somewhere else for nearly a year. I'm not crazy, she thought clearly. I know what I saw. I know what that declaration said. I know what this last year felt like, and I know what was real and what wasn't. She picked up her phone. She did not call anyone. She opened the Notes app and started typing. Not to Donovan, not a letter she would send, a letter to herself, the way Becca's therapist apparently called an inventory. Just the facts of what had happened, lined up in order, named correctly. She wrote for 40 minutes. She wrote, he chose someone who didn't know him. He needed someone who wouldn't see through him. I saw through him, and he needed me not to. She wrote, I made myself small, and he still left, which means the smallness was never going to be enough, which means I was performing for an audience that had already gone home. She wrote, I have been carrying the weight of keeping his life running while he decided whether he wanted to stay in it. She wrote, the apartment, the car, the investment account he mentioned at dinner parties as if it were his. None of it was his. She stopped, read back what she'd written. Then she wrote one more thing. I deserved better than this. I deserve better than this. That is not dramatic. That is a fact. She closed the phone. The baby was awake now. She could feel it. That particular quality of movement that was not sleep moving, not the unconscious adjustments, but the real kind, alert and deliberate. I know, she said out loud. I know it's the middle of the night. You get that from me. The baby shifted, pressed back against her hand. She stayed at the window until the sky began to lighten at the edges, the dark blue thinning to gray, the first nothing sounds of morning beginning below. Then she went back to bed, lay on her left side with her hand on her stomach, and felt the baby settle slowly back to sleep. She slept 2 hours. She woke up at 6:45 with the complete clarity of someone who had finally finished being angry and had moved to the other side of it, where everything was still and certain. She knew what she was doing. She had known for weeks, but now she felt it in her bones, which is different. She got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She did not make cinnamon toast. Some rituals you perform until they're done, and then you stop performing them, and that is how you know they were rituals and not your real life. Her real life was on the screen in front of her. She opened the Whitfield Capital Group Board report and began to read. Connecticut in November was gray and bare, and beautiful in the specific way of things that had put their energy inward for the season. Claire drove up on a Thursday. She had told Donovan she was visiting her mother's old friends, which is what she always told him, which is what she told herself she would stop needing to tell anyone after this. The offices of Whitfield Capital Group occupied the top 2 floors of a building on Asylum Avenue in Hartford. The building was hers. She had bought it 7 years ago when the company outgrew the 3-room suite on the floor below. The exterior was unremarkable on purpose. A habit she had developed early, keeping the visible surface modest. What mattered happened inside. Meg Calloway was waiting in the conference room. 61 years old, silver hair cut clean and close, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, the way she always wore them when she was working rather than meeting with someone. She had a stack of folders in front of her, organized in the precise way Meg organized everything, which was to say, organized in a way that appeared casual and was in fact a very specific system. She stood when Claire walked in, looked at her, really looked. "You look like you're carrying the whole world in there," she said. "Just one baby," Claire said. "How are you?" Not a question. Meg never asked it as a question. "Functional," Claire said. "Focused." "Good." Meg handed her the top folder. "Everything you asked for." Claire sat, opened the folder. Personnel files. Holloway Creative. Full. Complete roster, 47 employees. She found Serena Holt's page in the first third. Contract type, 6-month term, renewable. Performance review date, 21 days from today. Review authority. Rested at the subsidiary level, but could be escalated to portfolio management, which meant, in the specific language of Whitfield Capital Group's operating structure, that it rested ultimately with Claire. She read the performance notes. Strong, consistently rated highly, good relationships with clients, no flags. She closed the folder. "Leave her in place," she said. Meg's expression did not change. "That's what you want." "If I disturb the Holloway situation right now, Donovan's attorneys may draw a connection. I need 30 days of clean quiet before we move anything. You want him comfortable. I want him exactly where he is," Claire said, confident, underinformed, proceeding. Meg nodded. She had worked with Claire for 9 years. She understood, better than almost anyone, how Claire thought. The patience of it. The way she could hold a position without moving it before it was time. "The board restructure is ready when you give the word," she said. "After the legal filing is complete." Understood. They spent 2 hours going through the portfolio, not specifically related to the divorce, but the regular work of running 11 companies and making decisions about their futures. This was the part of Claire's life that had nothing to do with Donovan, that had never had anything to do with Donovan. It had its own rhythm, its own demands, its own satisfactions. She felt herself settle into it the way you settle into something that fits. Afterward, she met Owen Gable for lunch. Owen was 38, quiet in the way that very precise people are quiet. Not absence, but selection. He and Claire had met at a conference 11 years ago, in the first year of Whitfield Capital's operation, when they had both been the youngest people in a room full of much older men who kept addressing their remarks to the wrong person. They had recognized each other immediately. He arrived before her, which he always did, and was drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet, which he put away when she sat down. He looked at her. "You look tired." "I am tired," she said. "Understandably." He closed the case on the tablet. "You've been handling this alone. I had to know what I was doing first." "Fair." He turned his coffee cup in his hands. "What do you need from me?" She had thought about this. She had thought about it in the car on the way up which was 2 hours each way, and she had thought about it clearly. "I need you to watch me," she said. "I have a plan. It's clean and legal, and I believe it's right. But I have been in a very particular kind of pain for 6 weeks, and I want someone I trust to tell me if I'm operating out of clarity or if I'm operating out of something else." Owen looked at her steadily for a long moment. "That you're asking the question," he said, "tells me you're fine." She believed him. "He has no idea," Owen said. It was not a question. None. What was it like, sitting across from him every day? She considered this honestly. "I thought it was love," she said. "The not telling. I thought I was protecting something, the purity of it. Him choosing me without the money in the room." She paused. "I understand now that you can't build a real thing on an incomplete truth. It doesn't matter how good your reasons are." Owen nodded. Do you wish you'd told him?" "I wish I hadn't needed to hide it." She looked at the menu, though she already knew what she was ordering. "I wish he had been the kind of person who wouldn't have needed that from me. But that's not the same thing." He was quiet. Then, "The baby. 6 weeks. Dr. Aldrich says everything is right on track. Have you chosen a name?" "Catherine." She looked at the window. "For my mother." Owen smiled, a small, real one. She would have liked that. She would have said it was about time, Claire said, and for the first time in several days she also smiled. Becca was asleep on the couch. She had arrived at 7, with Thai food and a promise to watch something terrible on television, and she had fallen asleep somewhere around 9:30 in the middle of a reality program about people who renovated other people's kitchens without permission. And she was deeply, completely asleep, her mouth slightly open, one hand curled under her cheek. Claire stood at the kitchen counter at 3:14 in the morning and looked at her. There was something about it. Becca just being there, present and asleep, not solving anything, not requiring anything, just filling the couch with the solid fact of her presence, that hit Claire somewhere the strategic thinking couldn't reach. She turned back to her tea. It had gone cold. She didn't make more. She checked her phone. Lock, unlock, lock. Set it face down. She opened it again. Searched. Co-parenting with a narcissist. Read the first paragraph of an article. Closed it. Opened it again. Searched. How to co-parent when you don't trust the other person. Closed it. The 3 in the morning searches that answered nothing and made you feel less alone for conducting them. The baby kicked. Hard this time. A full body roll, elbow or heel tracing a slow arc across the inside of her stomach. The kind of movement that was impossible to ignore or minimize or file away. Claire laughed. Out loud alone at 3 in the morning in a dark kitchen, she laughed. The involuntary kind. The kind your body produces when it forgets, for a full second, that you were in pain. She put both hands on her stomach. "Hello?" she said quietly. "I know it's late. You get that from me too." The baby settled, pressed back against her hands. She stood there for a long moment, just holding that, the particular weight of it, the specific warmth, the reality of it, that had nothing to do with Donovan or the company or the divorce papers on the kitchen table. You didn't ask for any of this, she thought. You just want to be born. You don't know yet that the people waiting for you are not the people I thought they'd be when I made those plans. She felt the grief of that, fully. Then the other thought, born into what, exactly? She turned it over honestly. Born into a mother who had spent 11 years building something extraordinary by herself. Born into a network of people, Meg, Owen, Becca, Todd, who were, every one of them, people she had chosen deliberately. Born into a name that meant something. born into a world where her mother would know, whatever else had happened, that she was not starting over from nothing. Whole doesn't mean what you thought it meant, she thought again. She went to the couch, sat in the armchair across from Becca, watched her sleep for a moment. This was the thing she had been holding at arm's length for 6 weeks, and possibly for longer. The loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone. She was not afraid of being alone. She had been, in a fundamental way, alone inside her marriage for years. The loneliness of pretending otherwise. The loneliness of performing a version of herself and watching it be loved, and knowing the love was landing on the performance. She had built walls around the company to protect it. The walls had grown. She sat in the chair and held this truth without moving away from it, which was different from processing it strategically. She just let it be true. She had loved him and also kept herself from him. He had loved her and also left. Both things were real. She could hold her own part of it. She did not forgive him. This was not that moment. That moment was a long way away, and she was not going to rush it. But she stopped, here, at 3 a.m, making him the entirety of the story. He was a chapter, an important one, the one where she learned what she had been hiding from herself. But she was the whole book. She opened her phone, Notes app. She had been writing in it at odd hours for 2 weeks now, a habit she hadn't planned. She wrote, "Here is what I know is true." She wrote for 37 minutes. She wrote about her mother, about the inheritance and what it had meant and why she had built something instead of just holding it, about the 23-year-old woman in a Hartford conference room with a stack of documents and a name she was going to put on something permanent. She wrote about meeting Donovan and what she had hoped for and what she had gotten, and where the two things were not the same. She wrote, "Starting over doesn't mean I was wrong to want what I wanted. It means I have better information now." She wrote, "I don't have to be small to be loved. The right person will not need me to be small. That person exists. I'm not looking for them right now, but they exist." She wrote, "I am 31 years old. I have a daughter coming. I have a company that works. I have people who know the real me and chose to stay. That is not starting over. That is already something." She stopped, read it back. Then she put the phone face down on the armrest and closed her eyes and was asleep in 4 minutes, which was the fastest she had fallen asleep in 6 weeks. She woke to Becca in the kitchen, making coffee, the gray morning light coming through the curtains. "You slept," Becca said, surprised and pleased. "A little," Claire said. "Good." Becca handed her a cup, sat across from her. "How are you?" Claire thought about the real answer. "Like something settled," she said. "Something that had to happen." Becca studied her. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready," Claire said. She picked up the coffee. "I was just finishing something first." The meeting was Todd's idea. Claire had wanted a letter. Todd had said no. He said he needs to be in the room when he reads the amended filing. He said some things need a witness to become real. She had agreed. The conference room at Todd's office on a Thursday morning in December, neutral table, neutral chairs, a window overlooking the gray street below. Claire arrived first. She was 33 weeks pregnant and wearing a deep navy dress, and her hair was down, and she looked at first glance exactly as she always looked, composed, quiet, moderate. Donovan arrived 7 minutes later with his attorney, David Marsh, who was silver-haired and precise and had a very good poker face that was about to be tested. Donovan stopped when he saw her. She had not seen him in 11 days. She watched him look at her and recalibrate. The way you recalibrate when you expected one version of something and got another. She did not help him recalibrate. She met his eyes and waited. "Claire," he said. "Donovan," she said. They sat, Todd on her left, Marsh on Donovan's right. The papers in the center of the table. Marsh opened. Standard language. Prepared. Efficient. The proposed division of marital assets, the custody arrangement, the support calculation based on Donovan's declared income versus Claire's declared income of her teacher's salary. Todd let him finish. Then Todd reached into his portfolio and produced a document. He slid one copy to Marsh. He placed one in front of Donovan directly. "The amended asset filing," Todd said pleasantly. "You'll find everything is documented, filed publicly with the state for 11 years, and entirely separate from the marital estate." Marsh picked up the document, began to read. The pause happened at the bottom of the first page. 4 seconds. David Marsh, 30 years in family law, set the document down and looked at Claire. Donovan had been watching Marsh. He looked at the document. He started reading from the beginning. The room was very quiet. The ventilation system made a low, consistent hum. Claire watched Donovan read. She watched the moment it landed. The specific moment, midway down the second page, when the numbers became real to him. The portfolio valuation, the ownership percentage, the founding date. He looked up. She met his eyes. She did not look away. "This isn't tous." He stopped. "How long?" 11 years, she said. Before the marriage. 3 years before." His jaw moved. "You never said anything." "No." "Why?" And here she could have given him the short version. She had given everyone else variations of the short version. She gave him the real one. "Because I wanted to know what it was like to be chosen without the company in the room," she said. "I wanted someone to love me without the money being part of it. I thought that was possible if I just kept the two things separate." She paused. "I understand now that I was wrong about how to get there, but that was the reason." Donovan looked at the document again, then back at her. She watched the calculation happening in his eyes. Not grief, she noted, not guilt in the purest sense, but the specific recalculation of a man who had assessed a situation incorrectly and was now determining the scope of the error. "The apartment," he said. "A trust I hold independently, yes. The investment account. Mine, yes. The..." He stopped, ran through the internal inventory. She watched him do it, watched him recalibrate 4 years of shared life and reattribute every line item. Marsh was already making notes. He would need time with this. Everyone in the room knew it. "You've been supporting us," Donovan said. "Substantially, yes." "For how long?" "Most of the marriage." The silence that came after this was a different kind than the previous silences. This was the silence of a man sitting inside the full knowledge of something he could not unknow. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice had a different quality now, not anger, something more complicated. She looked at him for a long moment. She thought about what to say, and she chose, as she nearly always did in the end, the true thing. "I told you at the beginning that I was careful with my money," she said, "that I had my grandmother's estate, that I kept it separate. You said that was smart. You didn't ask more questions." She paused. "I think part of me was waiting for you to ask more questions." He had no answer to this, so she thought this was perhaps the most honest thing he'd given her in years, the absence of an answer, which was its own answer. Marsh cleared his throat gently. "I think we need some time to review the amended filings before we can continue substantive discussion." "Of course," Todd said. "We'll be in touch by end of week." "We'll be available," Todd agreed. Claire stood. She picked up her bag. She looked at Donovan one more time. This man she had married, this man who had held her hand until it hurt in an ultrasound room, this man who had needed her, smaller than she was. And she felt, not triumph, not devastation, but a kind of completion. The shape of the thing finally visible, the picture finally whole. "I'll have my calendar sent over for co-parenting scheduling," she said. "The baby is due in 6 weeks. I want that coordinated before she arrives." "She?" Donovan said. "We're having a daughter," Claire said. She left the conference room first. She walked down the 14th floor hallway to the elevator, and she pressed the button, and she stood and waited, and she did not look back. The elevator came. She stepped in. The doors closed. She exhaled slowly, let her shoulders down, pressed her back against the wall of the elevator, and felt, for the first time in 11 days, that she could breathe fully. It was done. Not finished. There would be months of legal process ahead. But the thing she had been carrying since the morning of the manila envelope, the weight of what he didn't know and what she did, the held breath of 6 weeks, that was done. She stepped out of the elevator and into the lobby and into the December air. Cold, clean, the particular cold that precedes snow. She stood on the sidewalk and felt it on her face. Then she hailed a cab and went home. The email came at 2:17 on a Tuesday afternoon. Claire was at her desk in the home office. The real desk now. The Whitfield Capital files open, no more pretending, and her personal email showed a name she recognized from the Halloway Creative Personnel file. The sender, Serena Holt. She looked at it for a moment, then she opened it. The email was 2 paragraphs. No apology in the opening. She noticed this immediately, the same way she had noticed things that mattered for 11 years. It began, "I believe we need to have a conversation. I think you already know why. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to say some things in person. If you're willing, I am completely at your discretion." Claire read it twice. Then she forwarded it to Todd with a note. "I'm going to meet with her. Not legally relevant, personal. I'll let you know." She replied to Serena, Thursday, noon, the coffee place on Grant. Serena replied in 4 minutes. "I'll be there, thank you." Thursday came. Claire arrived first. She ordered tea and sat at the table by the back window, the one furthest from the door, because she had spent 11 years reading rooms before entering them, and she chose her positions carefully. Serena Holt arrived precisely at noon. She was, in person, younger looking than the headshot suggested. The professional polish that photographed confidently softened in person into something less certain. She was wearing a gray coat. She spotted Claire and walked over and sat down without prolonged ceremony. She ordered coffee, looked at the table, then looked up. "You know who I am," she said. "Yes," Claire said. "You know what I did?" "Yes. I found out about the company 3 weeks ago," Serena said. "A colleague mentioned Meridian Ventures in a meeting, and She stopped. "I did some research. I understand structurally that you hold my contract." "I do," Claire said. "Are you going to end it?" Claire considered her answer for a moment. "No," she said. "You're good at your job. I don't make business decisions based on personal situations. And I think—" She paused, choosing this carefully. "You were also operating on incomplete information." Serena looked at her. "He told me we had grown apart," Serena said. Her voice was level, but the levelness required effort. "That you were more roommates than partners. That the marriage had been over emotionally for years and you were both just—" She stopped, waiting for the right time to end it. "That's not what was happening," Claire said. "I know that now." "What else did he tell you?" Serena looked at the window. That he was financially independent. That the apartment was his. That the life he was describing, what he could offer, was his. She was quiet for a moment. I'm good at reading people. I've been doing it professionally for 8 years, and I missed it completely. Claire held her teacup in both hands. He's very good at it, she said, not defending him. Accurate. He needs people who make him feel like the most important person in every room, Serena said. It was clear she had thought about this, had arrived at it recently, had turned it over until it was smooth. He doesn't know he does it, but that's what he needs. Yes, Claire said. They sat with that for a moment. I ended things 2 weeks ago, Serena said. He said things were more complicated than he'd represented, which was a short exhale, an understatement. Claire was not surprised. She had expected this. Had in fact predicted it to Meg in early November. He'll leave her too, once the situation becomes complicated. He needs simplicity. He needs someone who needs nothing from him. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Serena said. I want to be clear about that. What I did was wrong. I knew he was married. I accepted a version of the story that I wanted to accept because it was convenient. She looked directly at Claire. I'm sorry for that. I don't expect anything from that. I just needed to say it to you directly. Claire looked at this woman across the table, 29 years old, sharp, self-aware enough to have sought this out, aware enough to have written an email that didn't open with an apology, but said everything an apology was supposed to say. She thought about what Becca would want her to do. She thought about what Meg would say. She thought about what her mother, who had been a very precise reader of character, would make of the woman sitting across from her. We were both lied to, Claire said, by the same person, in different ways for different purposes, but both of us were handed a story and chose to accept it. She set down her cup. You accepted his version of the marriage. I accepted the idea that you could love someone completely while hiding half of yourself from them. Serena was very still. Neither of us was entirely wrong to want what we wanted, Claire said. We were just working with bad information. A long silence. He's already different with someone new, Serena said. I saw it before we ended. The same things he said about you, the same phrases. He started saying about an overlap. Someone from his office. Claire felt this land. Not with devastation, with the specific clarificing, but then the specific clarifying pain of confirmation. He needs the story to be simple, she said. He needs to be the hero. When it gets complicated, when he has to be accountable, he finds a new story. Serena nodded slowly. What will you do now? Have my daughter, Claire said. Run my company, build something I'm proud of. She looked at the window. The December light was thin and clear. What will you do? Serena was quiet for a moment. Something shifted in her face. Something deciding. Ask better questions up front, she said. Trust the things that feel incomplete. It was not forgiveness. It was not warmth, exactly. But it was something real. Two women across a table, in December, having a conversation that a man had made necessary, finding that the conversation had its own value entirely separate from him. They almost smiled. Not the same smile, but at almost the same moment. Serena left first. She shook Claire's hand at the door, formal, genuine, the handshake of someone who respected what had just happened. Claire watched her go. She sat for another few minutes with her tea. She thought about Donovan in that restaurant, comfortable, moving forward, already writing his next story with someone new who didn't know the previous chapters. She felt something that was not quite pity and not quite contempt. Something closer to clarity. He will do this again, she thought, to someone else, maybe more than once, and eventually the version of himself he keeps performing will run out of audiences who haven't seen the show, and he'll have to actually be someone. And maybe that will change him. She hoped it would. She meant that without irony, but that was not her story anymore. That was his. She put on her coat, gathered her bag, walked out into the December cold and felt it on her face, clean and certain. The kind of cold that meant something was almost over and something else was beginning. She took out her phone, called Becca. "How was it?" Becca asked immediately. "Not what I expected," Claire said. "Better." "Better how?" "She's not who I thought," Claire said. "She's someone who got used to." A pause. "That doesn't make it okay, but it's the true thing. And how do you feel?" Claire thought about it honestly, walked half a block in the cold thinking about it. "Like, I can see the whole picture now," she said. "I couldn't before. I was in the middle of it. Now I can see the whole thing." She paused. "And the whole thing makes sense, even the parts that hurt." Becca was quiet for a moment. Then, "That sounds like almost done." "Almost," Claire agreed. Catherine Whitfield arrived at 6:42 on a Thursday morning in January. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. The delivery was uncomplicated. 4 hours of labor, the steady, efficient kind Dr. Aldrich present throughout. Calm and precise, as she always was. Becca was in the waiting room. She had been there since 4 in the morning, having arrived at Claire's apartment with a bag of snacks and the energy of someone who had decided she was a permanent part of this story and no one was going to argue her out of it. She had a playlist she called Emotionally Correct and a folder of hospital paperwork she had filled out for Claire 2 weeks prior. Meg had sent flowers at 5 in the morning. Claire had not told her she was in labor. Meg had called at midnight, operating on some combination of intuition and a deep 9-year familiarity with Claire's patterns. Owen had sent a message that said simply, "We've been waiting for you, Catherine." Donovan was in the waiting room when Claire arrived at the hospital. She had told Todd to make sure he was informed, not because she owed him the chance to be there. She had thought carefully about whether she did, and had concluded that she did not, strictly speaking, owe it to him. She had done it because Catherine was his daughter, and that was a fact that existed outside of anything he had done to Claire, and Claire was trying, carefully and deliberately, to not confuse those two things. He came in when Catherine was 50 minutes old. He stood at the door of the room with the look of a man who was not sure of his welcome, and had made peace with deserving to be unsure of it. Claire was in the bed. Catherine was on her chest. Both of them were doing the thing that happens in the first hour of new babies' lives, which is that they look at each other with the complete, stunned attention of two people who have never met and are making immediate and permanent decisions about each other. Claire did not look up when Donovan came in. She looked at her daughter. "She's perfect," Donovan said. His voice broke on the second word. "Yes," Claire agreed. He sat in the chair near the window, not near the bed. He sat with the awareness of someone who understood exactly where the appropriate distance was and stayed on the correct side of it. Catherine made a sound, small, specific, a little indignant. "I know," Claire said to her. "I know. It's a lot." Donovan watched. His hands were in his lap. His eyes were full. After a few minutes, he said, quietly, "I didn't know what you were. I know. I think—" He stopped, the way he stopped when he was about to say the true thing. She had learned to recognize this pause in 6 years of marriage. "I think I would have been afraid, if I'd known." "Yes," she said. "I know that too." He absorbed this. "Was that why you didn't tell me?" "Partly." She looked at Catherine, who was studying the ceiling with great seriousness. "I wanted to be loved without the company in the room. That was real, but I also—" She was quiet for a moment. "I think I knew, on some level, that you would have needed me to be different, and I didn't want to find that out. So you never let me." "No," she said. "I never let you." This was as close to the truth of their marriage as they had ever come. 6 years in a hospital room with a new baby between them, and finally they could see the shape of the thing they had made and where the weak points had been. He stayed 40 minutes. He held Catherine for 10 of them, with the careful, stunned concentration of a man who had just understood that the person who mattered most to him in the world had arrived before he was ready. Claire watched him with her daughter. She felt something she had not expected to feel: tenderness, not for the husband, not for the marriage, for the father, the specific, genuine softness of a man holding his daughter for the first time, fully present. The performing stopped. He existed. The person she'd been looking for at that fundraiser, the honest man with the honest laugh. He existed. He was just not capable of being that person in a partnership with an equal. He needed something she couldn't give him without disappearing. She hoped he would figure that out. She hoped it before Catherine was old enough to watch it happen. He left at 8:30. Becca came in immediately after, looked at Catherine, and sat down and cried without apology for a full 3 minutes. Claire let her. Then Becca looked up and said, "She has your eyes." "She has my mother's eyes," Claire said. "Same thing." Becca wiped her face with the back of her hand. "She's extraordinary." "I know," Claire said. The divorce was finalized in March. The settlement was clean, which Donovan's attorneys had not expected, and Donovan himself seemed to have accepted with the specific resignation of a man who understood that he had no standing to fight. He took his salary and his car and his life. The apartment, the investment structures, the financial infrastructure that had quietly sustained them, all of it belonged to Claire, had always belonged to Claire, had been documented as Claire's for 11 years. He signed on a Wednesday morning. Todd called her at noon. "Done," he said. "Thank you," she said. "What are you going to do now?" She looked at Catherine, who was asleep in the bouncer on the kitchen table in the new apartment, the one Claire had chosen entirely for herself. 3 bedrooms, good light, a kitchen window that looked out over the city and let the morning sun in at the right angle. "Make cinnamon toast," she said. "Catherine and I." Todd laughed. "Congratulations, Claire." "Thank you, Todd." She made the toast. She ate it standing at the kitchen window, Catherine asleep and the bouncer beside her, the January sun very clear and cold. She ate the toast and looked out at the city and thought about a woman in a Georgetown kitchen making toast every Tuesday for someone else's memory, shaping her life around someone else's comfort, keeping herself carefully contained. She thought about that woman with something like forgiveness. She had been doing the best she could with what she believed love looked like. That was not stupidity, that was faith. It had been misplaced faith, in the end, but the capacity for it was not a weakness. The capacity was, in fact, a strength. She just needed to aim it differently. In February, she gave an interview, her first public one, as herself, as the founder of Whitfield Capital Group, as Claire Whitfield, in the full version of who that was. The journalist was from a business publication. Young, careful, clearly a little nervous. They sat in the Hartford office, the real one, the one with the clean lines and the window view and the photograph of her mother on the credenza behind the desk. The journalist asked standard questions about the company's growth, the portfolio strategy, the plans for the coming year. Claire answered them cleanly and precisely. Then the journalist looked up from her notes and said, "Can I ask something personal?" "You can ask. There's been some coverage recently about the divorce, the circumstances." She was being careful with her words. "Was there a moment when you considered not using what you had? Staying quiet?" Claire thought about this, really thought about it. "The company was never a weapon," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I didn't keep it secret in order to deploy it. I kept it secret because I believed that was how I got to have something real." She paused. "I was wrong about that. You can't build a real life on a half-truth. even if the half-truth is motivated by something genuine. When did you understand that? The morning he served the papers, she said. I sat on the kitchen floor and I read the asset declaration, and I saw that he had spent 4 years with me and did not know me at all, and I had to ask myself, whose fault is that? And? Both of ours, she said. His for not looking, mine for not showing. She looked at the window. Women are underestimated constantly in ways that feel like kindness. People decide what we need to be protected from, what we can handle, what we should want. I participated in that for a long time because I thought playing small was the same as being safe. She paused. It isn't. Playing small just means the love you receive is for a smaller version of yourself. The journalist wrote something down, looked up. What changed? I had a daughter, Claire said, and I decided I wasn't going to show her how to be invisible. The interview ran in March. She did not read it when it came out. She was in Hartford in a board meeting, and then she was home giving Catherine a bath, and by the time she sat down with her tea and opened the magazine, the day had already happened without her reading it, which meant she could wait until she felt like it, which felt like the right thing. Becca texted, "You sound like yourself, the whole yourself. Finally." Meg called. "The board wanted me to tell you they are proud. I wanted to tell you myself. Owen sent nothing, but he was in the Hartford office when she arrived the following Monday morning, coffee on the table, her chair pulled out, no explanation required. Catherine was 3 months old on a Wednesday in April. Claire brought her to the Hartford office for the first time, just briefly, just an hour, just to introduce her to the people who had been part of the scaffolding of her mother's life for 11 years. Meg held her with the practiced ease of a grandmother. She had 4 grandchildren of her own, and looked at her with the same precision she brought to everything. She's going to run something, Meg said. She's going to have choices, Claire corrected. That too. In May, Donovan came to pick up Catherine for the first weekend visit. He arrived on time. He was always on time now, punctual in the careful way of someone who understood that every action was being noted. He had a car seat installed correctly. He had the right kind of formula in the bag. He had done the reading. Claire watched him buckle Catherine in, patient and focused. She stood on the sidewalk outside the building in the May morning and watched his car pull away, and she felt the specific grief of that. The baby going with someone else, even for 2 days. And underneath the grief, something else. Relief. Not at being without her daughter, at being exactly who she was, standing on a sidewalk in May, with the full knowledge of herself and the full ownership of her life. Watching a chapter of her story drive away, and knowing the chapter that remained was the one she had actually been writing all along. She went back inside, made tea, opened her laptop. On the screen, the Whitfield Capital Group board report was waiting. 11 companies, dozens of people whose work touched thousands of others. The infrastructure of something she had built, from the first page of her mother's estate files when she was 23 years old and furious with grief and determined to make it mean something. She sat at the table in the quiet apartment and she worked. Not because she had to, not because it was a performance or a proving or a defense, because it was hers, fully, completely, unambiguously hers. Because she had built something real and she was allowed to love it without apology. Because her daughter would grow up watching a mother who knew what she was and showed it without hiding. She worked until noon, then she made cinnamon toast and ate it at the kitchen window, standing in the May light, and thought about nothing in particular and everything at once in the way that only possible when your life finally fits the shape of your actual self. She had built an empire in silence. Now she was building a life out loud. And the sound of it, the real, full, uncontained sound of it, was better than anything she had ever hidden. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaning, inspiration, and real human lessons through the power of storytelling.